Hey everyone, so good to see you guys. So glad you're here tonight for another night of groups. Hope your small group's been going well. Hope you guys had some good highs and very few lows that you guys were talking about. Well, we're sort of gonna wrap up our series on parenting tonight with the end of our series, How to Raise Your Parents. And if you've been here all 3 weeks, you're probably starting to think like, okay, this stuff is great for me, but like, really, it's my parents who need to change. This might be what you're thinking. I know if I was in your shoes, I would be thinking like, okay, yeah. I need to be a better kid. Gotcha. But like, are you making lessons from my parents too? Like, what are they learning? Because the truth is, I don't know if you guys know this. There's not really a like book that everybody gets once they become a parent, right? Like maybe there's books on parenting, but there's not like one book that like the doctor will give your parents when you're born that's like, hey, here's the solution to all of your problems, right? Clean, neat, tidy, parenting for dummies 101, right? That's just not out there. Really, most parents just parent the way they themselves were parented, right? So like when they were growing up, your grandparents or your great-grandparents, whoever raised them, the way that they were parented is probably the way they're parenting you. And so chances are, this is a very scary thing to say, chances are you are going to turn out a lot like your parents. And for some of you, you may be happy with that answer because you think your parents are cool. Some of you may be horrified by that answer, right? Because there's really just no one way to parent. But it's a relationship that we're going to have for our entire life. And there is a book that helps us on relationships that kind of applies universally, right? And it's the Bible. God's love letter to us, telling the story of our redemption through Jesus, is its primary purpose, but it has tons of wisdom for us in the area of relationships. And really what our relationship with our parents comes down to on this last week that we're going to be looking at it is really, do you want to win with your parents in that relationship, or do you want to lose? Because there are choices you can make that either will set you up to win in your relationship with your parents or set you up to lose in that relationship. So let's get some wisdom and practical tips from the Bible. Well, kind of foundational for any relationships. Like this will help you be a better kid. This will help you be a better friend. This will help you be a better boyfriend or girlfriend, although you shouldn't be thinking about that yet. This verse right here is wildly helpful for that. It comes from Philippians 2, verses 3 and 4. It says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others." And that sets us up with an interesting question, right? Like, do you consider your parents' best interests? Or are you just looking out for yourself? Are you just so focused on yourself that you think, man, my parents are so mean, the way they treat me and the way they take my stuff away and the way they don't give me anything and the way they don't do this and this and this and this and this? Or are you looking out for your parents? I think that can really just be a game changer in framing and how we look at our relationship with our parents, right? Is it all about you, or is it all about the people who are around you? You have to be interested in others and looking out for them to have great relationships, right? We see Jesus modeled that through his whole life. The way he looked out for others, built some really amazing friendships with his disciples, and allowed for great ministry with other people. And so, are you more concerned about your own interests or the interests of others, specifically your parents in this case? And there's 4 big areas we're going to look at tonight that you can either choose what you want to do, or you can choose to look out for your parents in these 4 different areas, right? And it's all your choice. That's the thing. This has nothing to do with what your parents are doing. It's just all your choice. The first area is in your words, right? Our words can either tear people down or build people up. I was at the school the other day. I was at Roosevelt Junior High, and I was playing Nine Square with them. I had the Nine Square set up out in the lunch area, and a few kids were playing, and I'm kind of like trying to ref the game and chat with new kids and kind of make sure nobody starts a fight, right? And like from behind, I hear these three kids walk up to these other students, say something to him, and I have no idea what they said, but the student dropped his backpack, dropped his stuff, and then walked up to these like three boys and like asked them to leave. And I don't know what was said, but I know that it must have been some words that really, really tore him down. So much so that I had to practically like get in the middle and be like, what is going on here, guys? Like, first of all, kid, you're crazy. It's going to be a 3v1 if you start something. But second of all, like, hey, you guys, shouldn't be saying whatever it is you said. I don't even know what it is because I know how it impacted this student. And I think we all can think back to words that we've heard that have really torn us down. Like sometimes even things people aren't thinking about. Like they just throw out a comment about how you look today, or they just throw out a comment about how you're acting, or they just throw out a comment about something embarrassing you did, and it could just really, really sting. Or our words can be used to build each other up and to encourage and to support and to help other people become more of who God has made them to be, right? Words can hurt, but they can also really, really build up people. They can hurt, but they can also help. In Ephesians 4:29, it says, when you talk, do not say harmful things, but say what people need, words that will help others become stronger. Then what you will say will help those who listen to you. So let's turn this kind of to the direction of our parents, right? If you want to get your parents to listen to you, because I'm sure there's been times where you are losing your mind because your parents just won't listen to what you're saying. If you want your parents to listen, maybe you should use words that build them up, right? Like these words, why don't you ever understand anything I tell you? You're so dumb. I hate you. You're stupid. Why can't you just be like this parent? Why can't you be more like them? These are all words that are going to tear down your parents, probably make it less likely that they listen to you. But instead, what would it look like for you to build them up and to honor them with your words, right? Proverbs 12:18 says that careless words stab like a sword, but wise words bring healing. You bring healing through words. And we all need support from the people around us, especially in our family, to have a good life that God wants us to have, right? And when you tear down with your words, you are always going to lose. Always. No matter if you really like put somebody in their place so you think, you're still really losing in that situation because your words are tearing people down. So I want you guys to think about this week, just what are some words that you can say to build up your parents? And my guess would be, they would be shocked by this if you started to build them up in your words. Because for some of you, that would be a real change of dynamic for you. And they might even be thinking like, I don't know what is happening at youth group. I don't know if you guys are getting bribed, getting $20 or what, but there's a difference here. I want you guys to, this week, try to leave your parents thinking like, man, there's a difference in the way that my kids are talking to me. I would just love if that happened, right? And don't always just build them up in like external things. Like you don't want to say, to your like mom or grandma, like, hey, in that outfit, you really don't look so heavy in that. Like, don't use nice words and quotes like that, but try to get like about internal things. Like, hey, when you said this to me, I really appreciate it. Or, hey, I recognize that you did this for me, and I just want to say I'm grateful for that. Some of these internal things, right? Another area that we can choose whether we're going to win or lose with our parents is in our attitude. That's our choice. Do we want to be ungrateful or do we want to be thankful? Because if you are living in a house like most of you are, all of you are, and your parents are paying bills and they're maybe cleaning the house and maybe they're doing your laundry or maybe they're taking you to school, signing you up for clubs and sports, and at some point, all these things build up and we can start to get entitled to this. And when somebody is entitled, they are not grateful. When you expect your parents to just, make you dinner because that's just what they do, then you're probably not going to be grateful when they do serve you in that way, right? And I get that as a maybe silly example because hopefully your parents are feeding you, but when you're entitled, you're not grateful. And we've all been around people who aren't really grateful for things, and they're just not fun people to be around, right? You help somebody out, you give somebody something, stick of gum at school, or you help them with their homework, and they're just like, cool, and they just don't even thank you for it. Like, man, that can kind of hurt. If you think that you're entitled to this stuff, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous attitude to have. When you start to realize, and for a lot of people, this happens in high school, so maybe you guys can get a head start here. When you start to realize that, man, your parents, they actually do a lot for you. Like, yes, maybe they're not the nicest. Yes, maybe they, seem strict and maybe harsh. But think about some of the things that they do for you to help you out. And when you start to realize that, that's actually a very mature thing to realize, thing to think about. In 1 Thessalonians 5:18, Paul's going to write, give thanks whatever happens. That is what God wants for you in Christ Jesus. You see, an attitude of thankfulness that can be directed to our family. 1 Timothy 5:8, it says, anyone who won't care for his own relatives when they need help, especially those living in his own family, has no right to say he is a Christian. Such a person is worse than the person that does not believe in God. Paul's trying to say, like, hey, our family that all of us are given, like, we should show extra care to those people that God has placed in our lives. And so, primarily this is, probably directed at parents and raising their kids, and dads, taking care of their families. But I think it's true for kids too, that you should be looking out for your family because, you're sharing a house with them. Like, it's the closest relationship that you have for like your whole life, right? So really, really take care that your attitude is correct. Sometimes we think, man, our parents are so mean, and we don't really stop to think about, well, maybe we've kind of been training our parents to be that way, right? Like, I think about it like this, like whenever my wife and I, we got a dog, right? And we set out to train this dog, right? We wanted him to be a service dog, help out my wife, be an emotional support animal. So we set out with all these like lofty ambitions, right? We're going to train him. We're going to train him to be nice. We're going to train him not to bark. We're going to train him to sit all the time, to lay down all the time. He's going to be the most well-behaved dog of all time, right? Well, if any of you guys have a puppy or a dog, that's super hard. In fact, I would say that we weren't necessarily training him so much as he was training us, right? Like, he was absolutely training us. He knew how to get, especially me, because like I'm a big softie when it comes to my dog. He knew how to like get exactly what he wanted out of me. He knew how to get me to take him on a walk. He knew how to get me to let him outside. He knew how to get me to give him a treat. He knew how to get me to give him a snack, to play with him. All this stuff. Like, he's practically training me more than I was training him. Like, my dog was in charge, I feel like, of our relationship. Very backwards. Well, there's times where this backwardsness, if that's a word, can happen in our relationship with our parents too, where really we think they're being mean to us, but really we're training them to respond to us in that way, right? Even if your parents never did anything else for you going forward, there's still some things that you should be grateful to them for, right? The time, energy, money that they spent in raising you, and really just the life that you have is at least a good start, right? You could be ungrateful and lose, or you can choose to be thankful and win. So another quick challenge for you guys. I'm going to try to give you a challenge each time. Another challenge for you. What would it look like for you to make a list of things that you're thankful for, right? You can start off with like really, really silly things that you're thankful for. Like, I'm glad that I don't have to walk to school in the snow 2 miles uphill both ways, like maybe some of your parents have school stories from, right? Like, maybe you start there. Like, I'm grateful that my parents, don't talk to me in the morning or something like that. I don't know, like silly stuff like that. Start with that. But then really start to think, what can I be grateful for? And then if you want to take it a step further, what would it look like for you to write a thank you letter to your parents? I know that whenever Mother's Day and Father's Day rolls around, which is coming up, by the way, I'm always at a loss for what I can give my parents. I'm like, I think I'm going to give my mom another candle for the 18th year in a row. I think I'm going to give my dad, I don't even think I give my dad anything for Father's Day. And it's not always the gifts that really matter, I think, on those days, but really I think it would be powerful if we wrote a letter just thanking, a genuine, heartfelt letter, thanking your parents for what they've done for you. If that's the gift, first of all, by the way, it's free, doesn't cost you any money, hey-oh. But that's really going to be impactful because it's using words like we talked about a second ago and having an attitude of thankfulness to bless your parents and really to win. Here's another area, third area, right? We talked about words, we talked about attitude. Now it's about our heart. We can either choose in our hearts to be bitter or to forgive. We've all had people in our lives that are very bitter and they're not fun to be around, right? They just never seem like they're having a good day. It never seems like you're caring for them enough or loving them enough. They're just like dragging everybody down with their bitterness, right? And sure, each one of us could have genuine reasons to be bitter, and maybe you have genuine reasons to be bitter in your relationship with your parents, but it's still a choice, despite what reasons you think you might have, whether you want to be bitter at your parents or you want to be forgiving to them. We really are the most like Jesus when we're extending forgiveness to others. Because when you look, Jesus time and time again both came to die for us and offer us forgiveness, but also moment to moment, he's forgiving people. He's saying, Lord, forgive them. They know not what they do. He's extending forgiveness to adulterous woman and to all these different people, right? And so I would say that one of the times we're the most like Jesus is when we're forgiving. That's a choice we have, right? If I could give you advice from the future, I would say, man, if you are always bitter, you're going to lose. Because bitter people, they're looking for ammunition all the time. They're just looking for something that somebody does wrong to snatch onto it and to like throw it back at them, right? They're just constantly looking for the ammo. And that could be tiring to just always be like, oh, I bet you just said this thing. I'm going to write that down and pull these receipts later and get you with it. And it's just a negative worldview. Bitterness it turns everything into ammunition. But forgiving other people can be tough. One of the reasons why is we feel that when someone hurts us, they need to come to us. They need to apologize. And they need to, go on their hands and knees and beg us, please, for forgiveness. That's what we think when people hurt us. But really, Jesus loved and forgave people before they even apologized. In Ephesians 4, verses 31 and 32, it says, stop being bitter or angry or mad. Quarreling, which is like fighting, harsh words and dislike of others should have no place in your lives. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God has forgiven you because you belong to Christ. So here's a couple things you could choose to do that would really just flip the script on this attitude of bitterness and turn it into an attitude of forgiveness, or rather a heart of forgiveness, right? Ask for forgiveness out of the blue. Wow, that would be a game changer, I think. Say something like, hey, that hurt when you said that, mom and dad, person, sibling. I just want you to know that I forgive you. And don't say it in like a guilt trippy way. Be like, I forgive you. You should say sorry. But like, just honestly say, I forgive you. Or, mom, I was thinking about something I said to you and I've got to say I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? How powerful would that be in your relationship? And how much would that help you win with your parents? Right? And the last area that we're going to focus on just briefly, talk about words, attitude, heart. Last one is faith. It's your choice. You can rely on your own wisdom or you can tap into God's wisdom. Ultimately, faith is the idea that you are going to put your trust and put your life into something or someone else. And for us, followers of Jesus, we know that we're putting our faith, we're putting our life and our trust into God's hands through Jesus. And that's faith, and it changes our lives. It's not just thinking like, oh yeah, Jesus, I know that guy. But it's really putting your life into his hands, right? And part of that is relying on God's wisdom. We have to realize, all of us, when we follow Jesus, that there's a part of us that has to realize, we're really not all that. We're not it. We aren't strong enough to save ourselves. We're not smart enough. We're not good enough. We're not any of these things. But Jesus has made a way for us to be enough because he can complete us by his love and his forgiveness, his grace and his mercy, right? So Colossians 1, verse 9 and 10 says, we ask God to give you a complete understanding of what he wants to do in your lives. And we ask him to make you wise with spiritual wisdom. Then the way you live will always honor and please the Lord, and you will continually do good, kind things for others. All the while, you will learn to know God better and better. God, He knows what we need. He knows what we want too, but he's definitely going to give us what we need. It's a funny example. Like imagine that, my friend is just, he's in the desert and he's like wandering through the desert, my best friend, and it's really hot. And I'm thinking like, I have a feeling I know what he needs. He probably needs some water because he's in the desert. It's hot. He's sweating. He's all stinky. Like he needs some water, probably. And he comes up to me. He's like, hey, Nathaniel, like, can you please give me something to drink, please? And in my head, I'm like, I got you. And he's like, would you give me something? He's like, but you know what? I only want a Slurpee from 7-Eleven at 64 ounces, root beer flavored with a cherry on top and a licorice straw. And I'm like, okay. I just give him a water bottle. He'd probably be so mad at me, like, are you kidding me? You didn't listen to me. You never, give me what I want, all this kind of stuff. But that's not true because I knew that he just needed some water. In fact, probably what he wanted, the Slurpee from 7-Eleven, probably was going to be worse for him than actually just giving him water straight up. And I was giving him what he needs, not necessarily what he wants, right? And in our relationship with God or in our relationship with our parents, we can even think that is the same way. We can ask and want and desire the super deluxe Slurpee, but really God is going to give us what we need, always. And when we are focused on ourselves, we get really bitter and entitled when we don't get what we want. But when we're focused on God and focused on others, when we get what we need, we can be thankful, grateful, just really blessed by that. And so our faith, it can either be in ourselves and we just trying to get through life ourselves, or we can put it in God and trust in Him. And part of God's wisdom that we would be putting our trust in is knowing that God has a plan in our families, that God wants something for our parents that's good for them and that blesses them. And He wants something for us, and it's good for us too. And part of that is making sure that this relationship we have with our parents is one where we are choosing to win in our faith, in our heart, in our attitude, and in our words. So think through that. What might this look like this week for you? How can you be more loving in your words? How can you be more grateful? How can you be more forgiving? And how can you be more reliant on God's wisdom in your relationship with your parents? So I hope you guys have a great conversation following this. I'm so glad you guys are here to just dig into this with me. I love learning about this, and I hope it blesses you and helps you have a better relationship with your parents. And ultimately, like the Bible's onto something when it says, like, if you honor your father and mother, you're going to have a good life and you'll live long in the land, right? Like it's a blessing when you can get along well with your parents. So I pray that happens for you, and I hope you guys can come back next week. Love you guys. See ya.